Hello there. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest with me, Kabir Naqvi. The first segment on IYI, we focus on oil refining because LPG, gas crisis, that's all the world can talk about vis-a-vis the Hormuz Strait and the choke point. But now, from Jamnagar to Texas, the United States now needs Indian refining expertise. What does this mean for the global heft that India now brings and packs on to the table? Well, take a look at this. For decades, the global energy map has been defined by a simple flow. Oil comes from the Middle East or the Americas and it is processed in the massive refineries of the East. But now, that map is being redrawn. Reliance Industries, the powerhouse behind the world's largest refining complex in Jamnagar, is making a massive 9-figure bet on American soil. The company is backing a new oil refinery at the port of Brownsville in Texas, and this will be the first new refinery built in America in nearly 50 years. That's right. Reliance has signed a 20-year deal to buy all the gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel the plant produces. The refinery will have a capacity of 168,000 barrels per day and will process only American light shale crude. Over the next 20 years, it is expected to handle about 1.2 billion barrels of US oil, creating an economic value of around $300 billion. The US president has already called this historic. Construction is set to begin in the second quarter of 2026. You see, despite the shale revolution, most American refineries were built decades ago to process heavy and imported crude oil. They aren't equipped to handle the light shale oil produced right in their own backyard. And as a result, the United States often exports its own oil only to import different oil to refine. And this new project, designed to process 100% US light shale crude, aims to bridge that very gap. Reliance brings its proven expertise from the huge, the world-renowned Jamnagar complex, along with fresh capital and a firm long-term commitment. 20 years. That is why this deal matters. And for India, the gains are clear. The project gives long-term access to United States fuels and strengthens energy security. It reduces our heavy dependence on supplies from the volatile Middle East. It also deepens the energy partnership between India and the United States as a perfect corridor and expands Reliance's global presence. Now, this fits perfectly into India's interest-first approach. We buy Russian crude when it makes economic sense. We maintain diplomatic ties with Iran to help stability in West Asia. We invest through Reliance in American refining. We use Israeli defense technology for our military needs, and we continue to receive remittances from 10 million Indians working in the Gulf, many in the oil sector. Every step is taken with India's own needs and priorities in mind. An esteemed set of panelists with us on the broadcast, and the big questions that we are trying to decode. Is it a big win for both Reliance and India? It is an Indian company, but what's in it for India? Will this Texas refinery really protect India from future oil shocks in the Gulf? And can India keep balancing different global partners without facing pressure from any side? Ujjwal Singh Bhatia, former ambassador to the WTO, with us on the broadcast. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert, joining us live from London. Dr. Devina Singh, PhD, Assistant Professor, Amity Institute of International Studies. Ambassador, let me get this snowball rolling real quickly. President Donald Trump has called this a historic $300 billion deal. Energy partnership is how he's coined it. From India's perspective, what's in it for India? Is this simply a corporate deal, sir? Or does it represent India's growing geopolitical leverage, geopolitical heft in global energy markets? And what a time in history to be talking about this when we see the Strait of Hormuz and the choke point that we can't stop talking about.
Well, let me start with a somewhat of a dampener.
Okay.
As of now, to the best of my knowledge, Reliance has not made any official regulatory pronouncement. So what we are discussing for the moment would be in the realm of the speculative. But let me also point out two or three things. The company, America First, is a startup. It is not a listed company. Its balance sheets are not known. We don't know how this project is going to be really financed. Thirdly, President Trump spoke about $300 billion. Now, this refinery, from whatever I could glean, the investment is only $4 billion. And the rest of the amount, I think President Trump has added up the turnover for the next 20 years based on the term sheet that is reportedly has been finalized. So the investment is only 4 billion. We don't know whether Reliance will be making a capital investment in the project or whether it will be only involved in the processing, refining, and distribution. The other question is about refineries in the United States. It is correct that a major refinery has not come up in the United States for almost 50 years, and there is a reason for that. And I think the big reason is the robust regulatory permissions that are required, including involvement of communities in getting the sanctions. So whether the project gets approval immediately, I think we would need to wait and see. As far as Reliance is concerned, and if the news is indeed correct,
Yeah.
I would urge that we look at Reliance not only as an Indian company, but as a global company with global interests. Now, what it would be doing is to get access to the American shale market, and that is a major gain. And potentially, it could also get access into the Venezuelan market. Now, this together would allow it to hedge against its exposure to Russian portfolios. So overall, I would say it would be a sensible way of for proceeding.
But sir,
for
from what I
Reliance.
understand, Ambassador Bhatia, it seems like these are more pros for Reliance as a company, not as much as India back at home. And the dampener that you started with, I mean, that's a big, incredible point. So essentially, we're back to square one. Are we? There's nothing good that's going to come for India as a nation from this?
No, if Reliance gets this access to Venezuelan crude and to the shale crude in the United States, it certainly gives us a certain hedge against the Gulf oil. And to that extent, it is a positive. But as I said, our discussion today is broadly speculative. We still don't know enough of the facts.
Okay. Adit, what's your viewpoint? India today imports oil from Russia. The Gulf is, that's a balancing act that we're doing. And increasingly, the United States, indirectly Venezuela. Is this deliberate diversification the core of our current energy strategy? Take a look at what's happening here back at home and how all the ministers have time and again emphasized that India's energy security and energy priority and requirements are going to be paramount. So this diversification, which in the run-up to this debate and discussion, we've had so many other panelists. You've been on some of those shows, and they've constantly spoken about diversification. Yesterday's enemy does not need to be today's enemy. So this balancing act, why Reliance from Jamnagar to Texas, and does it reap any benefit nationally for us?
I think diplomacy is not done by diplomats.
Ambassador, let me bring in Adit Kothari. I'm going to come back to you, Ambassador.
Just echoing, Ambassador Bhatia's sort of motion from there on. Yes, of course, we do not have, clarity on what the deal between Reliance Industries and America First Refinery is. That is still, as Ambassador Bhatia put out, still speculative to best of our interests. But we know that a deal has been stitched up. AFR has indicated that the total cost of investment towards this project is going to be roughly about $4 billion, and they will be turning around 300 billion circa across their operations of the next 20 years. From an Indian prism of things, I think it enhances India's standing in the sort of India-US ties. But when we look at the conversation around the diversification, I don't think, yes, in hindsight, we can say that, this is in future, it will pave a way for our diversification eventually. But in the short term, in especially in and around this particular war that we are all entangled in, I don't think it gives us any sort of a leverage from that perspective. The whatever the deal is today, whenever they start producing that oil, whenever they start rolling them out into the market, Reliance objective here is basically to take that as a supply chain and redistribute it globally. You've got to bear in mind that you yourself have alluded to that United States did not have that kind of technology to
Yeah.
basically refine that oil. Whereas Jamnagar, if you look at the history of Jamnagar, they today are turning around somewhere around 216 different kind of variants of oil, including the light sweet ones. So from that perspective, they already have the know-how, they have the technology, and all they're doing is they are doing a little bit of a tech transfer across the Atlantic into the United States, and they will, we don't know whether there is a direct investment cost involved or not. But for now, all we know is that they will be buying that oil and redistributing it globally. I hope there is enough
Okay.
investment from a Reliance perspective, because it gives India that sort of economic leverage in the United States, something that we've always spoken about to counter sort of China's, sort of ability in the United States, where they've created US jobs, where they've looked at tech transfer, where where they have, leveraged their sort of policy in the United States. So it gives India that sort of leeway in the United States.
But then
Kabir.
again, you're saying it's too soon. It's still early doors to understand something like that. I mean, I was here thinking that this could be a long-term energy supply corridor between India and the United States. Dr. Devinath Singh, how do you look at this? I mean, Adit mentioned why Reliance is the key player here, and why with Reliance capabilities, Reliance makes itself that preferred partner for a project like this. But does this deal strengthen India's multi-alignment strategy?
First of all, thank you for having me with such esteemed panelists. And secondly, moving into the conversation on this, I think one of the perspectives that is worthwhile to look at is also the current situation in West Asia, where the American involvement has caused a disruption in the global oil supply chains as well. So thus, this deal could possibly bring in, obviously the US is trying to diversify its own ways of refining its oil, but it could be a way that ensures security for India as well. Now, we do import a lot of oil from West Asia as well, and with the current crisis with this in the Strait of Hormuz as well, this is possibly a way for India to hedge and win a bit of a favorable position with the US as well, which is the leading aggressor in the war against Iran as well. So I do believe that this is a situation where we are also trying to ensure that we can safely walk through this tightrope situation in the global scenario, where we do not have to over depend on just our Gulf sources or just Russian sources. And also, I believe in the current situation where the US recently announced that it is giving us permission to refine oil from Russian sources as well. This could possibly be interpreted as an answer towards that situation as well. So, but yes, we can look.
Okay.
This is one of the ways that I'm looking at it.
All right. Many thanks for your opening submissions. Ambassador, sir, coming back to that corridor that I was talking about, I mean, we were here thinking that America's quote-unquote reliance on Indian refining expertise could be of some benefit here. But I mean, we started the discussion on that dampener. Notwithstanding that argument, sir, can this in the future, I know $300 billion is going to happen somewhere later, 20 years down the line. Can it effectively create this long-term energy supply corridor between India and the United States? Can it possibly happen? We've seen time and again how American diplomats have come, some on Indian soil as well, and they've said that they're going to make sure India never rises to the same level as themselves. The kind of leeways and concessions China gets, India is not going to be getting those kind of concessions. But now that Reliance is there with our expertise, refining their, shale oil. Can this corridor actually become a reality, sir?
I think we need to be a bit more realistic here. Reliance is a private company, a global company. It is not a government company. It does not have the responsibility of creating energy security for India per se. But to the extent that it works globally, it creates different avenues, alternative sources for our oil and gas requirements. I'm sure it provides us that extra hedge against the uncertainties of the Gulf. Now, diplomacy is not something which is practiced by diplomats alone. And I think if this Reliance investment comes through, then it would be economic diplomacy at its highest. It does provide, as has been pointed out, it does provide us with some leverage in the United States. And also, I think this is a point which needs reiteration. It also provides us a hedge against our Russian purchases.
Okay.
So
Okay.
once we have skin in the game in the U.S. oil industry, to that extent, I think our Russian sources can also be maintained.
On that note, how does this then become a diplomatic advantage? You spoke about the access to the stocks there. You spoke about the market access in Venezuela. But then again, I do concede this is working out for this private company, Reliance, and the funding will essentially, tell us how much of India, has their, skin in the game. How then does this become a diplomatic advantage for us nationally?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Ambassador.
Yes. One as I explained, one of the diplomatic benefits would be it reduces the pressure on us regarding Russian purchases. And secondly, I'm sure the government refiners and government oil buyers can work out deals with Reliance to create this supply line from the Americas. So I think it provides us, this is part of the mosaic of energy security that has been stitched up. And this is only one move. There will be many more moves in the very near future, given the shock that the Gulf crisis has created for all of us. So I think this will be a positive development. And I think we need to watch out, look forward to confirmation from all sides.
Well, all right, Ambassador. I mean, I'm telling you, it's really great to hear the positive word, the adjective that I was looking for, because we started the discussion and the discourse on that dampener. And I do agree with you. I mean, if that's the number play that we're looking at, 4 billion vis-a-vis $300 billion, that to 20 years down the line. I mean, of course, one has to get excited. This is America that we're talking about. And Donald Trump has been saying, quote unquote, drill, baby, drill for the longest time. And now they need the Indian expertise. It's the Indian Reliance that they want. And Reliance does it better than anybody else. We know that. Jamnagar is a great example. So, Adit, again, coming to the geopolitical scenario in which this deal is being construed. This deal comes at a time when tension in West Asia have exposed vulnerabilities around the Strait of Hormuz. Just a couple of minutes back, Iran put out a statement saying not a single iota or a drop of oil will pass through the Strait of Hormuz. A couple of days back, China had exclusive access, but that's going to stop as well. And who knows what's going to happen the next minute. So this refinery that's going to come up, no matter what kind of money, no matter who has the actual stakes over here, could this refinery be seen as India betting against future energy disruptions? How will that play out? Let's try to, connect the dots in the future. I know it's easier said than done, but let's take an attempt.
So, I mean, if we look at the sheer numbers, of how much this particular venture would basically produce on a daily basis versus what is the global output that the Strait of Hormuz basically allows to pass through, which is 20% of global oil. From that perspective, yes, it's a start, but are we getting anywhere with it? Are we being able to sort of completely displace the Strait of Hormuz completely? I don't think so. I mean, from geopolitically, I think what the way we see this is a soft power projection for India, which India has started from 2014 onwards. Remember, this is not the first time that the Reliance has been dealing with the United States. When the export bans on the United States was lifted in 2015, I think it was in 2016 that Reliance started to receive its first shipment of the US crude. So it started to sort of engage from that perspective way back in 2016. And they have, this deal has been, in the making for a number of years. And what we are seeing today is just a result of years of dealing with the United States, ensuring that we can comply with all of their rules and regulations, and as a consequence, be able to project ourselves from that soft power perspective. And you also have to give it to both Adani and Reliance. I'm going to be very unpopular on your show for saying that, but Adani and Ambani's are the embodiment of Modi's vision of 21st century economic superpower, because he is trying to create them as a economic alternative, a Chinese alternative into the United States. You can already see the kind of investments that they've come up with. When you look at the data centers, for example, Reliance and with Google, that sort of investments, those partnerships are happening, and there is government intervention, there is government handholding in the grand scheme of things, which is why I'm saying this is an economic projection of India from a trade and economic leverage perspective, Kabir.
Well, Dr. Devina, analysts say that this shows India does not pick sides geopolitically, but chooses its strategic partners wherever they serve national interests. So again, coming to the energy security perspective, let's talk about that just a little bit more. How important is it now for India to have these diversified refining and supply arrangements beyond the Gulf region? And isn't this a step in that very direction?
Yes, sir. And adding on to Aditya's point as well, as we see, like from a US perspective too, it could be seen that this diversification of inviting India, even though it's a private company that is investing in this project, inviting India for this is also a way of supporting an alternative power in Asia, where we're countering the rise of China, which is pretty much an important agenda in the U.S. foreign policy as well. So inviting India, even through a soft power channel, as has been mentioned, and through non-state actors like a private-owned company, is also a way of showing that India is possibly the next supporter as an Asian power compared to China, which is growing in its regional influence. And this also along the side of the current West Asian disturbances because of the war has highlighted the possibilities of the Gulf nations aligning more with Chinese investments of economic stability in the region. Also brings about this narrative telling that US, which is currently still a power that China does not go against militarily, is supporting India. So I do feel like that adds on to the global narrative as well, and gives India the boost of image in the Asian side of the story as well.
Okay. Ambassador, you're right. This is in the realm of speculation, but this still isn't in the category of jumping the gun. If the government ends up backing Reliance later on, and all those benefits that you earlier spoke about, they do come true, does the fact that an Indian company helping build America's first refinery in the last 50 years, does it signal a new level of economic trust? What happens to the interdependence between these two large democracies? The partnership that continues to deepen in a way that goes beyond defense, beyond technology, beyond AI, beyond, I'm talking about long-term economic and energy security cooperation. That is something that's definitely on the cards, or are we reading too much into this?
I think we need to remember what the US Deputy Secretary said recently in the Raisina dialogue. He said that American policies help to build up China, and they're not going to repeat the same mistake vis-a-vis India. Let's remember that. India will rise, but India will rise on its own strengths. and on its multipolar politics. India should not be seen as a sort of a play in the chess game between China and the United States. India has its own strengths and will play up to those strengths. And therefore, when we talk about deals like this, companies like Reliance, of whom we can be all proud, they do us proud. But as I said, they are part of that larger mosaic of energy security that is being built up. And we need more such companies like Reliance to show the flag around the world in terms of our economic strength.
So then what's the final takeaway from this, Ambassador? What should be the final takeaway from this entire deal, from the entire speculation, from the entire discussion that we had so far?
A positive development.
Okay.
But we await further details. But if all the details are confirmed, certainly a positive development, and it opens up alternative avenues for our energy security.
Okay. Adit, what's your takeaway? India quietly becoming a swing player in global energy markets. We were earlier talking about that, balancing act, relying on the Gulf, importing from Russia when it's needed. And then again, of course, a little bit from the United States as well, indirectly Venezuela. So are we ready to become that swing player when we're talking about global energy markets? So what's your takeaway? Adit, you'll have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
Yes, I was just going to say that, the way India has calibrated itself, to become this global player. Remember, we do not produce a lot of crude, but we do certainly import a lot of crude, and we export a lot of diesel. I mean, we've recently just, we've agreed to continue supplying diesel to Bangladesh. That despite the kind of drastic consequences that we have domestically, politically, a lot of people don't understand that India doesn't actually import any diesel, but rather imports crude and then refines it, produces it diesel, and then sells it at market price to Bangladesh. Domestically, it still hurts us a lot because that kind of information doesn't sort of trickle down to the lower strata of the electorate. So, from that perspective, I think India's calibrated itself very well. We've got great refineries. We are sort of being able to, refine from the light shale oil to the Russian crude, and we're being able to export it out to various countries. In fact, EU is one of our massive consumers at this point. Whatever India has been able to refine, EU basically consumes all of that. So from that perspective, I think India is in a rather self-sufficient position. We've been able to also diversify our sources. We are stitching up deals with Angola, with Nigeria, with Canada now with regards to LNG and LPG. Even Russia is saying that when the market prices are sort of balancing, we may be open to supplying LNG to India. So I think India is rather in a very insulated position from that perspective. The only issue here is that with the rising prices of all of these energy sources, we will be hit. We will be hit domestically hard from that perspective, which the GDP will basically have a significant amount of hit.
Okay. Let's leave it at that. Dr. Devina, I've completely run out of time here, but Ambassador Bhatia, Adit, always a pleasure to have you with us. Dr. Many thanks for taking up the time. India once worried about securing oil supplies. Let's not take that away. Today, its companies are helping shape how the world refines and distributes that oil. There's a lot of money at play. $300 billion, 20 years down the line, is going to be a different macroeconomic. But from Jamnagar to Texas, this is not just about energy trade anymore. It's certainly becoming about energy geopolitics. And the final takeaway from all our panelists was that this is still early doors, but a positive development. With that, time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Our second segment on In Your Interest, right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
खेलता है झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया घर